Hello, everyone. This is Patrick, and I hope you're all doing well. Although this past Easter weekend was very different than usual, I hope it was just as joyful. Today we'll be in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament, studying chapter 3, verses 15 through 18. This is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the fiery furnace that many people know. But for anyone who doesn't know, that's okay. I'll give you a brief summary. The king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, built a golden statue and invited all the officials in the kingdom to come see it. They were ordered to bow down and worship the image when the band played. The consequences if you didn't bow down was that you'd be cast into a fiery furnace. The band then blasted their instruments and everyone bowed, except for these three men, as they refused to bow to anyone or anything except to God. Now the king is told about this, and they are seized and brought before him in the furnace. Now I'll read Daniel chapter 3, verses 15 through 18. Now this is the king speaking. Now if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Now I have a few thoughts and applications for us. First, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had two opportunities to give in. Both were tough spots, the first being peer pressure, and the second being pressure from their king in front of the fiery furnace. They stayed true through both temptations, especially under the threat of death. Second, they had faith in God and his power over miracles. I'll spend a little time talking about this thought because I feel that it's very prevalent today. As Christians, we expect great things from God, and we attempt great things for God in faith. That phrase might sound familiar. We have to be careful with that phrase. The miracles shouldn't be what our focus is on, but rather on God's power. Take, for example, the Israelites after Egypt. They saw God perform mighty miracles among them, but they still didn't believe he had the power to deliver them out of the wilderness. A couple thousand years later, then there's Jesus. They saw him do these wonderful signs and miracles, and then they expected him to overthrow the Roman authorities. Rather than believing in him and turning to God, they ended up crucifying him on a cross. This is what happens when we put our faith in the miracles rather than God. We put God in a box, and when he doesn't do exactly what we want, we get upset. In Romans, it says God has eternal power and divine nature. The impossible to us is nothing to God. Now that's what I call fiery furnace faith. Not believing in the miracle, but believing in the God who has the power and authority to do so. The final point I'd like to share is in the story's resolution. Up to this point, regardless of the outcome, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have been great examples of faith. Now we see God's power on display. King Nebuchadnezzar called God out, and God showed up in a mighty way. Not only to his faithful followers, but also to show his divine sovereignty over the worst situations. The king and his officials witnessed God's power manifested in the fourth person in the furnace, with all of them being unburnt. Whether it was an appearance of Christ or an angel, God was with them, and that is the important thing. It's important to remember that God reveals his power not just for the believers, but also for those unbelievers to see as well. In closing, we need to have the fiery furnace faith. We need to expect great things from God and attempt great things for God, regardless if God saves us from the furnace or not, because our hope is not in the action, but in the God who can do the action. In Christ alone my hope is found, as the song says, and it could never be more accurate. Whether at the height of joy or in front of a fiery furnace, Christ is our only hope. Thank you for listening, and God bless.